The story of human nutrition is a tale of dramatic transformation. For millions of years, our ancestors' diets were shaped by the wild. They hunted formidable beasts like the woolly mammoth. They foraged for whatever edible plants, roots, and nuts nature provided. Their meals were a direct result of intense physical exertion and a deep understanding of their environment. This was not a diet of choice, but one of survival. It was a diet that, over vast stretches of time, molded our genetic makeup. Our bodies became finely tuned to the rhythms of feast and famine, to the nutrients available in the natural world, long before the advent of farming or grocery stores. Consider the daily life of early humans. Their primary concern was often acquiring enough calories to live. This meant tracking animals. Sometimes for days, it meant knowing which berries were safe and which were poisonous. The foods they consumed were inherently whole and unprocessed. Think wild game, rich in proteins and essential fats. Think fibrous tubers, seasonal fruits, and nutrient-dense nuts and seeds. There were no refined sugars, no artificial additives, no aisles of packaged goods. The energy they expended to get food was substantial, a stark contrast to our modern lives where calories are often effortlessly obtained, sometimes with just a few clicks or a short drive. This profound journey from ancient eating patterns to modern meal compositions is far more than a simple culinary evolution. It is a critical biochemical story, one that directly impacts our internal workings. The foods we consume are not just sources of energy. They are complex packages of information that speak to our cells. They influence our hormones, our metabolism, our gut microbiome, and even the expression of our genes. Every meal choice sends signals throughout our bodies, initiating a cascade of physiological responses. The dramatic shift in these signals from what our biology evolved to expect to what it now receives has profound consequences for our health and overall well-being. Our bodies, sculpted by millennia of adaptation to a specific ancestral dietary environment, now find themselves in a nutritional world that is alien in many respects. The introduction of highly processed ingredients, refined carbohydrates, and an overabundance of certain types of fats has created a mismatch. This mismatch between our ancient biology and our modern diet is believed to be a fundamental driver of many contemporary health issues. For an immense span of over 2 million years, our human ancestors, species within the Homo genus, navigated the world as hunter-gatherers. Their dietary habits were not a matter of preference, but a fundamental aspect of survival, intricately woven into the fabric of their existence. This extended period, known as the Paleolithic era, profoundly shaped our genetic predispositions regarding nutrition. The foods they consumed were solely what the natural environment offered, obtained through skill, effort, and an intimate knowledge of their surroundings. This ancestral way of eating, dictated by availability and necessity, laid the very foundation for the nutritional requirements that are still encoded within our biology today, a blueprint forged over millennia. The cornerstone of this ancient diet was wild game. Animals such as deer, bison, and, in certain eras and regions, even mammoths, provided essential proteins and fats. Hunting these creatures required considerable energy, cooperation, and ingenuity, ensuring that physical activity was an inseparable part of acquiring sustenance. The meat from these wild animals was typically lean, a stark contrast to much of the domesticated animal meat consumed today. It offered a dense source of nutrients vital for muscle development, brain function, and overall energy. This reliance on hunted food sources meant that protein intake was consistently a significant component of their daily caloric consumption. Beyond animal sources, our ancestors were adept foragers, gathering a wide array of seasonal plant foods. These included various tubers, which are starchy underground plant parts, providing valuable carbohydrates and fiber. They also consumed a variety of leaves, shoots, fruits, nuts, and seeds, depending on the local flora and the time of year. These plant-based foods contributed essential vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and a substantial amount of dietary fiber, far exceeding typical modern intakes. The diversity of these foraged foods also meant a broad spectrum of micronutrients, contributing to robust health and resilience in challenging environments where food supply could be unpredictable. Crucially, the diet of our hunter-gatherer forebears was entirely unprocessed in the modern sense. There were no factories, no chemical additives, no refined flours, and no concentrated sweeteners. Food was consumed in its whole natural state, or with minimal preparation, like cooking over fire. This meant that nutrients were delivered as nature intended, packaged with fiber and other beneficial compounds that moderated their absorption and metabolic impact. This dietary pattern, rich in whole foods and devoid of artificial manipulation, supported human health for countless generations, establishing a physiological baseline that our modern dietary habits often diverge from significantly. Scientific research into ancestral eating patterns, notably by experts like Laurent Cordain and his colleagues, provides valuable insights into the typical macronutrient composition of the Paleolithic diet. Studies published in journals such as the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition suggest a diet where protein constituted approximately 30 to 35% of total energy intake. Fats also played a significant role, contributing around 30% of calories. The remaining 40% of their energy came from carbohydrates, primarily from uncultivated plant sources. This balance was not a conscious choice, but a natural outcome of their food environment, providing a sustained energy release and essential building blocks for the body. Protein, predominantly sourced from wild game and fish where available, was a defining feature of this ancestral diet. This high-protein intake played a crucial role in promoting satiety, helping our ancestors feel fuller for longer, which was advantageous when food availability was intermittent. Furthermore, protein is essential for building and repairing tissues, including muscle mass, which was vital for their physically demanding lifestyle. The thermic effect of protein, meaning the energy expended by the body to digest and metabolize it, also subtly contributed to their overall energy balance, a factor often overlooked in modern dietary discussions but inherent to their way of eating. The fats consumed during the Paleolithic era were markedly different from any fats prevalent in modern diets. Animal fats, rich in beneficial omega-3 fatty acids, were a primary source, derived from wild game that grazed on natural vegetation. These fats were integral to brain development and function, a critical aspect of human evolution. They also played a key role in regulating inflammatory processes within the body. Unlike the processed trans fats or excessive saturated fats from industrially farmed animals found today, ancestral fat intake was from whole natural sources, intrinsically linked with protein and micronutrients, supporting cardiovascular health and cellular integrity. Carbohydrates in the Paleolithic diet came almost exclusively from non-cereal sources such as fruits, vegetables, tubers and nuts. These foods are characterized by their low glycemic index, meaning they are digested and absorbed slowly, leading to a gradual rise in blood sugar and insulin levels. This contrasts sharply with the refined carbohydrates like white flour and sugar that dominate many modern diets and cause rapid spikes in blood glucose. The high fiber content of ancestral carbohydrate sources also aided digestion, promoted gut health, and contributed to sustained energy levels, preventing the energy crashes associated with high glycemic foods. This steady carbohydrate metabolism was key to their endurance. Section 3, the wisdom of scarcity, omega balance and minimal sugar. A particularly important yet often underappreciated aspect of our evolutionary diet was the balanced ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acids. Anthropological research suggests that hunter-gatherer diets typically provided these essential fats in a ratio of approximately 1:1 or 2:1. This near parity is believed to be crucial for maintaining a healthy inflammatory response. Omega-3 fatty acids generally have anti-inflammatory properties, while omega-6 fatty acids, though essential, can promote inflammation if consumed in excess relative to omega-3s. This natural balance supported optimal cellular function and helped protect against chronic inflammatory conditions. The sources of these fatty acids were diverse and naturally occurring. Omega-3s were plentiful in wild game, particularly animals that foraged on a wide variety of plants, and in fish and seafood for populations living near water bodies. Certain nuts and seeds also contributed, though to a lesser extent. Omega-6 fatty acids were obtained from various plant sources, including nuts and seeds, but their intake was inherently limited by availability and never reached the overwhelming levels seen today. Modern industrial agriculture and food processing have drastically skewed this ratio, with current Western diets often exhibiting omega-6 to omega-3 ratios of 15:1 or even higher, fostering a pro-inflammatory internal environment. Sugar consumption in the Paleolithic era was minimal and sporadic. The primary sources of sweetness were ripe fruits consumed seasonally and occasional finds of wild honey, which would have been a rare and energy-intensive treat to procure. These natural sugars were always consumed within a whole food matrix, rich in fiber, water, vitamins and minerals, which slowed down sugar absorption and mitigated any potential negative metabolic impact. There were no refined sugars, high fructose corn syrup or concentrated fruit juices. This limited exposure to simple sugars meant that our ancestors' bodies were adapted to a low-sugar environment, maintaining high insulin sensitivity. In essence, the evolutionary diet was shaped by the realities of scarcity and the bounty of nature, unadulterated by artificial processing. This dietary framework, high in protein and fiber, rich in beneficial fats with a balanced omega-3 to omega-6 ratio, and very low in simple sugars, nurtured human health for millions of years. It created a metabolic and physiological expectation within our genes. The profound differences between this ancestral dietary pattern and the typical modern diet, laden with processed foods, refined carbohydrates, and excessive sugar, form the basis of the mismatch theory, which helps explain the rise of many contemporary chronic diseases. Section 1. The Seeds of Change. Cultivating a new way of life. The world as our ancestors knew it began to transform. Roughly 10,000 years ago, a profound shift occurred. This era is known as the Agricultural Revolution. It marked a completely new chapter in the human diet. People started to cultivate land systematically. They also began to domesticate and raise animals. This was a departure from millions of years of hunting and gathering. This slow but steady change altered human destiny profoundly. One of the essential developments was the deliberate cultivation of plants. Wild grasses were carefully selected and gradually domesticated by early farmers. Staple crops like wheat, barley, rice and corn emerged. These grains offered a significant advantage. They could be stored. This ability to store food provided a new level of food security. Farming involved clearing land, sowing seeds, and tending crops diligently. It was arduous labor, but it promised more predictable food yields. The human diet gradually started to revolve around these new cultivated crops. Animal domestication played an equally crucial role in this transition. Species such as goats, sheep, pigs, and cattle were tamed. These animals provided a ready source of meat and later milk. They also offered valuable labor for plowing fields. This represented a more reliable and accessible supply of animal products. It significantly reduced the daily uncertainty and dangers of hunting wild game. However, domesticated animals often had different nutritional profiles than wild ones. For instance, their meat could contain more fat, altering dietary fat intake. These fundamental changes in food production led to more permanent settlements. Small villages began to grow, eventually evolving into towns and then cities. Human populations started to increase at an unprecedented rate. A more stable and abundant food supply could support larger communities. However, this also meant people were living in closer proximity to each other. This new density had significant implications for sanitation and disease transmission. The dietary shift was now firmly established, moving away from ancestral patterns. Our ancestors were consuming foods their bodies had never encountered in such quantities. Section 2. Grains, Greens and Growth. The shifting landscape of nutrition, the newly adopted agricultural diet offered some clear and undeniable advantages. Most importantly, farming could produce a larger quantity of food calories per acre. This increased food output helped to feed growing populations more reliably. It significantly reduced the immediate and constant threat of starvation. Surplus grains like wheat or rice could be stored for extended periods. These stores provided a crucial buffer during lean seasons or crop failures. Agriculture allowed for the development of more complex societies and specializations. Yet these substantial benefits also came with certain nutritional trade-offs for individuals. One of the most significant nutritional changes was a reduction in dietary diversity. Our hunter-gatherer ancestors typically consumed hundreds of different types of plants and animals. Their diet varied greatly with the seasons and their geographic location. In contrast, early agriculturalists often relied heavily on just a few staple crops. This narrowing of the food base meant a less varied intake of nutrients. Dietary diversity is crucial for obtaining a wide spectrum of essential micronutrients. Consequently, the overall nutrient density of the diet may have declined for some. This phenomenon is sometimes referred to as nutrient dilution in early farming diets. Cereal grains became the central pillar of the human diet for many populations. Foods like wheat, rice, and corn provided a substantial portion of daily calories. These staple crops are notably rich in carbohydrates, a type of macronutrient. In stark contrast, ancestral Paleolithic diets were generally lower in total carbohydrates. Those earlier diets typically featured higher proportions of protein and varied fats. This fundamental shift towards grain-based, carbohydrate-heavy diets was a major departure. It significantly altered the macronutrient balance that humans had been adapted to. Our bodies, over generations, had to begin adjusting to this new primary fuel source. Legumes and dairy products also became more prominent in the human diet. Beans, lentils, and peas were cultivated alongside grains in many agricultural systems. These legumes provided valuable plant-based protein and fiber, but also new compounds. Dairy products obtained from domesticated animals like cows and goats were introduced. However, the ability to digest lactose, the sugar in milk beyond infancy, was not universal. Initially, most adult humans were lactose intolerant, leading to digestive discomfort. The genetic trait for lactase persistence evolved independently in dairy farming populations later. These new food groups offered additional nutrients but also presented fresh challenges for digestion. Section 3. Unforeseen consequences: how agriculture reshaped our inner biology. The widespread adoption of agricultural foods triggered various biochemical impacts within the human body. Our digestive systems and metabolisms encountered new food components in unprecedented quantities. Gluten, for example, is a complex protein predominantly found in grains like wheat, barley, and rye. For many early farming populations, gluten was a relatively novel protein in their diet. It can prove to be difficult for some individuals to digest properly and completely. In genetically susceptible people, gluten consumption can trigger significant gut inflammation. This inflammation can damage the intestinal lining and lead to nutrient malabsorption. Celiac disease represents the most severe form of this adverse reaction to gluten. Lectins constitute another group of carbohydrate-binding proteins that became more common in the diet. They are naturally present in many plant-based foods, especially in grains and legumes. Lectins can have the ability to bind to the cells lining our intestinal tract. This interaction may potentially interfere with the absorption of other nutrients from food. In some contexts, certain lectins can also contribute to gut irritation or inflammation. Traditional food preparation methods like soaking, fermenting, and thorough cooking can reduce active lectins. Nevertheless, the overall increased intake of lectins was a new dietary factor. This potentially exerted a novel influence on gut health and function for many individuals. Phytates, often referred to as phytic acid, are substances commonly found in whole grains and seeds. They are also present in significant amounts in legumes and some nuts. Phytates have a strong tendency to bind to certain essential minerals in the digestive tract. These minerals include vital nutrients such as iron, zinc, and calcium. This binding process forms insoluble complexes, making these minerals less bioavailable. As a result, our bodies cannot absorb these chelated minerals as effectively. This reduction in mineral absorption could potentially lead to deficiencies over time. This was a particular concern in diets heavily reliant on unprocessed, phytic acid-rich grains. The substantially higher carbohydrate load from staple grains also reshaped human metabolism. Grains, particularly when milled or refined, are digested and broken down into simple sugars. This influx of sugar causes blood glucose levels to rise after a meal. In response, the pancreas releases the hormone insulin to help manage this rise. More frequent consumption of carbohydrate-rich meals meant more frequent insulin spikes. Chronically elevated insulin levels can promote the storage of energy as body fat. Over extended periods, this pattern can also contribute to developing insulin resistance. This subtle, long-term biochemical shift set a new stage for metabolic health. Section 1. The Machine Age on a Plate, Dawn of Industrial Foods. The late 19th century marked another dramatic turning point in our dietary saga. The Industrial Revolution was not just about factories and steam engines, it fundamentally reshaped how food was produced, processed, and distributed. This period witnessed the birth of what we now call the industrial diet. New technologies allowed for mass production of certain food items. These items were often quite different from their natural counterparts. Suddenly, foods that were once rare or labor-intensive became widely available. This shift brought convenience, but also set us on a new nutritional path. The long-term consequences of this path were not immediately apparent to most people. Our journey into processed foods had truly begun, altering meals profoundly. One of the earliest and most impactful changes was the advent of refined grains. Innovations in milling technology, like the roller mill, became widespread. These new machines could efficiently strip away the bran and germ from wheat kernels. The result was a fine, white flour with a longer shelf life. This white flour was also perceived as purer and more desirable at the time. However, this refinement process removed significant amounts of fiber and essential nutrients. Vitamins, minerals, and valuable phytonutrients were lost in large quantities. Bread, once a more wholesome staple, began its transformation into a less nutritious product. This shift towards refined flour had subtle but far-reaching effects on public health. It was a key step towards nutrient-poor, calorie-dense dietary patterns. Alongside refined flour, refined sugar also became increasingly accessible and affordable. Previously, sugar from sugarcane or beets was a relative luxury for many. Industrial processing made it possible to produce large quantities of purified sucrose. This white crystalline sugar quickly found its way into countless food products. It was added to baked goods, beverages, and newly invented processed foods. The natural sweetness of fruits or honey was overshadowed by this concentrated alternative. People developed a taste for more intensely sweet foods and drinks. This dramatically increased the overall sugar load in the average diet. Our biology, adapted to minimal sugar, was unprepared for this sudden influx. This set the stage for significant metabolic challenges in the decades to follow. The early industrial food system also introduced new types of processed fats. While animal fats like butter and lard were traditional, new options emerged. Techniques were developed to extract oils from seeds like cottonseed on a large scale. These vegetable oils were initially marketed as cheaper and sometimes healthier alternatives. Hydrogenation, a process to solidify liquid oils, led to products like margarine. These innovations altered the types and amounts of fats in our diet. The balance of fatty acids, so crucial for health, began to shift. The convenience and novelty of these industrial foods were highly appealing. Few understood the profound biochemical changes these new ingredients would unleash. Our plates were slowly but surely being filled with industrially altered substances. Section 2, Sweet Surrender, the epidemic of refined sugars and fats. The proliferation of industrially refined sugar has had a staggering impact on our diet. Compared to our ancestral intake, which was minimal and sporadic, consumption skyrocketed. Estimates suggest that in many industrialized nations, sugar intake increased dramatically. Some figures point to an increase of up to 60 times the levels of ancestral diets. This monumental rise was driven by the low cost and versatility of refined sugar. It became a ubiquitous ingredient, not just in obvious sweets like candy and desserts. Sugar was, and still is, added to savory foods, sauces, bread and beverages. This hidden sugar contributes significantly to our overall daily intake, often unnoticed. Our taste preferences adapted, leading to a higher threshold for sweetness perception. This widespread availability fundamentally altered humanity's relationship with sugar. A major component of many added sugars is fructose, a simple sugar. While naturally present in fruits, industrial fructose comes highly concentrated. High fructose corn syrup became a particularly popular and inexpensive sweetener. Unlike glucose, which most cells can use for energy, fructose is primarily metabolized by the liver. When consumed in large amounts, the liver can become overwhelmed by fructose. Excess fructose is readily converted into fat within the liver cells. This process can lead to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, a growing concern. Furthermore, high fructose intake is strongly linked to the development of insulin resistance. As Dr. Robert Lustig's research highlights, fructose metabolism poses unique metabolic burdens. These effects contribute significantly to the rise of type 2 diabetes and obesity. The industrial era also brought a revolution in the types of fats we consume. Vegetable oils, often called seed oils, became prominent dietary components. These include oils extracted from soybeans, corn, cottonseed, sunflower, and safflower seeds. Advanced chemical and physical processes are used for their extraction and refinement. These processes often involve high heat and chemical solvents, potentially altering the oils. Initially, these oils were promoted as heart-healthy alternatives to saturated fats. Their widespread adoption was driven by agricultural abundance and lower costs. They quickly replaced traditional fats in cooking, baking, and processed food manufacturing. This shift resulted in a massive increase in our intake of omega-6 polyunsaturated fatty acids. Our ancestral diet had a much more balanced ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fats. This dramatic change in dietary fat composition has profound biochemical implications. While omega-6 fatty acids are essential, an excessive intake relative to omega-3s is problematic. The typical Western diet now often features an omega-6 to omega-3 ratio of 15:1 or even higher. This is a stark contrast to the roughly 1:1 ratio of our hunter-gatherer ancestors. Excess omega-6s can be converted into signaling molecules that promote inflammation. These inflammatory prostaglandins can contribute to chronic, low-grade inflammation throughout the body. This type of inflammation is an underlying factor in many modern chronic diseases. Cardiovascular disease, arthritis, and autoimmune conditions have all been linked to this imbalance. The industrial diet, therefore, created an internal environment conducive to inflammation. This was an unforeseen consequence of embracing these new industrially produced fats. Section 3, Engineering Cravings, the Science of Hyper-Palatable Foods. The industrial food system did not just change the ingredients we eat, it also mastered the art and science of creating hyper-palatable foods. These are products engineered to be intensely rewarding and difficult to resist. Food scientists combine specific ratios of sugar, salt, fat, and flavorings. These combinations are designed to hit our bliss point with maximum impact. The goal is to create foods that are so appealing they override natural satiety signals. This meticulous engineering makes us want to eat more, even when not truly hungry. These foods are often low in actual nutrients, but high in sensory appeal. Think of crispy chips, creamy ice cream, or sugary soft drinks. Their textures and tastes are carefully crafted for maximum pleasure and consumption. The powerful appeal of these hyper-palatable foods has a strong biochemical basis. Consuming them triggers a significant release of dopamine in the brain's reward centers. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter associated with pleasure, motivation, and reward. This is the same pathway activated by other rewarding stimuli, including addictive drugs. The intense pleasure derived from these foods can lead to a desire for repeated consumption. Over time, this can contribute to patterns of overeating and food cravings. As Barry Popkin's research has shown, the food environment itself plays a role. The constant availability and marketing of these foods make them hard to avoid. Our brains, wired to seek out calorie-dense foods for survival, are easily exploited. This system, once beneficial in times of scarcity, now works against us. This disruption of appetite regulation is a key feature of the modern diet. Our natural hunger and fullness cues, governed by hormones like ghrelin and leptin, can be overridden. Hyper-palatable foods provide such an intense sensory experience that these signals are drowned out. The high energy density and low fiber content also mean they are less satiating. We can consume large amounts of calories from these foods without feeling truly full. This contributes to a positive energy balance where calorie intake exceeds expenditure. Over time, this inevitably leads to weight gain and associated health problems. The brain's reward system, when constantly overstimulated, can become desensitized. This may lead to needing even more of these foods to achieve the same pleasure. It creates a cycle that is difficult to break, fueling the obesity epidemic. The imbalance of omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acids also plays a role here. As previously mentioned, industrial seed oils are a major source of omega-6s. These oils are extensively used in the production of hyper-palatable processed foods. They contribute not only to inflammation, but also to the texture and mouthfeel. The inflammatory prostaglandins derived from excess omega-6s can affect brain function. Some research suggests they might influence mood and behavior, potentially exacerbating cravings. Chronic inflammation itself can disrupt normal metabolic signaling, including appetite control. Therefore, the very fats used to make these foods so appealing also contribute to their negative health effects. The industrial diet cleverly combines ingredients that are both pro-inflammatory and highly rewarding. This creates a perfect storm for metabolic dysregulation and overconsumption. Section 4. The ultra-processed reality, a modern dietary dilemma. The culmination of these industrial trends is the rise of ultra-processed foods, or UPFs. These are not just foods with added sugar or salt, they are industrial formulations. UPFs typically contain 5 or more ingredients, many not used in home cooking. These include substances extracted from foods like casein, whey, and protein isolates. They also contain additives designed to imitate or enhance sensory qualities. Think artificial flavors, colors, emulsifiers, sweeteners, and thickeners. These products are designed for convenience, long shelf life, and high profitability. Examples are widespread packaged snacks, sugary drinks, instant noodles, and ready-to-eat meals. They often represent a significant portion of the diet in many developed countries. Their consumption has been steadily increasing globally, replacing whole and minimally processed foods. The biochemical effects of a diet high in UPFs are multifaceted and concerning. These foods are typically energy-dense but poor in essential micronutrients and fiber. Their high content of refined sugars contributes to insulin spikes and fat storage. The presence of industrial trans fats, though declining, and excess omega-6 oils promotes inflammation. The complex array of additives may also have unforeseen effects on gut health. Some emulsifiers, for instance, have been shown to alter the gut microbiome. They may also increase intestinal permeability, sometimes called leaky gut. This can further contribute to systemic inflammation and metabolic dysfunction. The physical structure of UPFs is also different, often leading to faster eating rates. This means more calories can be consumed before feelings of fullness set in. The hyperpalatability of UPFs, as discussed, drives overconsumption and disrupts appetite. This is compounded by their aggressive marketing and widespread availability. They are often cheaper than fresh whole foods, making them an attractive option. This is especially true for individuals with limited budgets or time constraints. The combination of low-cost convenience and intense flavor makes them hard to resist. As a result, UPFs can displace more nutritious foods from the diet. This leads to an overall decline in dietary quality and nutrient intake. The consequences include increased risks of obesity, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease. Emerging research also links high UPF consumption to certain cancers and depression. The modern dietary dilemma is how to navigate this landscape of tempting but detrimental foods. This era of ultra-processed foods represents the furthest departure from our evolutionary diet. Our ancestors consumed whole, unprocessed foods rich in nutrients and fiber. Their diets were naturally low in sugar and contained a balanced profile of fats. The modern industrial diet is almost the inverse of this ancestral pattern. It is high in refined carbohydrates, unhealthy fats, added sugars, and synthetic additives. It is often low in fiber, essential vitamins, minerals, and protective phytochemicals. This profound mismatch between our ancient biology and modern food environment is a key driver of chronic disease. Section 1. Protein power, the satiating strength and muscle maintainer. Our daily food intake is built around three main macronutrients: protein, carbohydrates, and fats. Protein plays unique roles beyond providing calories. It has thermogenic and satiating properties, meaning it uses more energy to digest and helps us feel fuller longer. This can aid in regulating calorie intake and preventing overeating. Protein is crucial for building and maintaining lean muscle mass, which burns more calories at rest compared to fat tissue. Ensuring adequate protein intake is important for everyone, not just athletes. It helps preserve muscle during weight loss and combats age-related muscle loss. Protein also repairs bodily tissues, produces enzymes and hormones, and supports the immune system. Quality protein sources include lean meats, fish, eggs, dairy, legumes, nuts, seeds, and soy products. Aim for variety, especially with plant sources, to ensure a complete range of essential amino acids. Choose whole, minimally processed protein sources and avoid highly processed versions like deli meats or protein bars. Carbohydrates are a primary energy source for the human body. They are crucial during high-intensity physical activity and preferred by brain cells. Carbohydrates exist in various forms, from simple sugars to complex starches and dietary fiber. The type of carbohydrate consumed and its processing level are vital for health. Slow-digesting carbohydrates, or complex carbs, include whole grains, legumes, vegetables, and whole fruits. Refined carbohydrates, or simple carbs, include white bread, pastries, sugary cereals, and sweetened beverages. Slow-digesting carbs retain natural fiber and whole grain components, while refined carbs have these stripped away. Refined carbs cause quick spikes in blood glucose and insulin levels, leading to fat storage and energy crashes. Slow-digesting carbs provide a gradual rise in blood sugar and insulin, offering steady energy and better satiety. Fiber in slow-digesting carbs supports digestive health and feeds beneficial gut bacteria. Choose whole, unprocessed carbohydrate sources to maximize benefits and obtain essential nutrients. Dietary fats are essential macronutrients vital for numerous bodily functions. They serve as a concentrated energy source, form cell membranes, produce hormones, and absorb fat-soluble vitamins. The focus should be on the type and quality of fats consumed. Natural, healthy fats include monounsaturated fats, avocados, olive oil, nuts, and polyunsaturated fats, omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. Omega-3 sources include fatty fish, flax seeds, and walnuts. Some saturated fats from whole food sources can be part of a healthy diet. Processed and artificial fats like trans fats are harmful and raise LDL cholesterol while lowering HDL cholesterol. Excessive intake of refined omega-6 seed oils can promote chronic inflammation. Dietary fat itself does not inherently cause fat gain. Chronically elevated insulin levels are a more significant driver. Healthy fats, when part of a balanced diet, are satiating and do not provoke dramatic insulin spikes. Choose whole food sources of fats and maintain a good balance of fatty acids for overall metabolic health. The modern era is witnessing an alarming surge in chronic diseases affecting billions globally. This rise is linked to profound dietary shifts from the agricultural and industrial revolutions. Conditions like obesity, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease are now prevalent. These conditions often appear together, creating complex health challenges. They share common underlying dysfunctions, such as insulin resistance. Addressing one condition can lead to improvements in others. Metabolic syndrome describes this clustering of risk factors. These conditions are increasingly affecting younger populations, pointing to potent environmental factors like diet and sedentary lifestyles. Our modern, highly processed diet has overwhelmed our ancient biological adaptations. Hyperinsulinemia, the central conductor of metabolic chaos. Hyperinsulinemia describes chronically elevated insulin levels linked to diets high in refined carbohydrates and sugars. This condition often leads to insulin resistance. Insulin promotes fat storage and inhibits fat breakdown, making weight loss difficult. Hyperinsulinemia also promotes chronic inflammation, affecting numerous tissues and organ systems. Chronic inflammation is a foundational element in many chronic diseases. Hyperinsulinemia can lead to endothelial dysfunction, impairing cardiovascular health. Sustained high insulin levels reduce nitric oxide production, promoting arterial stiffness and atherosclerosis. A cellular stress and silent damage. Lipotoxicity and glycation. Another damaging consequence of prolonged metabolic dysregulation is a condition known as lipotoxicity. The term lipotoxicity literally translates to fat toxicity. This harmful state occurs when excess fats or lipids accumulate in tissues that are not designed for fat storage. These non-adipose tissues include vital organs such as the liver, the pancreas, the heart, and skeletal muscles. While adipose tissue, or body fat, is specialized for storing large quantities of fat, these other organs are not. The abnormal deposition of fat in these areas, often called ectopic fat, severely disrupts their normal cellular functions. This dangerous spillover of fat is primarily driven by a chronic surplus of energy intake relative to expenditure, often in concert with hyperinsulinemia. The body's capacity to safely store fat within its designated adipose tissue sites becomes overwhelmed, leading to cellular damage. This cellular fat overload or lipotoxicity can lead to significant mitochondrial overload and dysfunction. Mitochondria are often described as the powerhouses of our cells. They are responsible for generating most of the cell's supply of adenosine triphosphate or ATP, which is used as chemical energy. Mitochondria metabolize fatty acids through a process called beta oxidation to produce this vital energy. However, when cells are inundated with an excessive amount of fat, their mitochondria can become completely overwhelmed. This can result in the incomplete oxidation of fatty acids. It also leads to a marked increase in the production of reactive oxygen species, or ROS, commonly known as free radicals. These ROS cause significant oxidative stress, which can damage various cellular components, including the mitochondria themselves, impairing energy production. The research of scientists like Gerald Shulman has been instrumental in elucidating these mechanisms. Beyond lipotoxicity, another critical process contributing to chronic disease is glycation. This involves the formation of advanced glycation end products, commonly referred to as AGEs. Glycation is a non-enzymatic chemical reaction. It occurs when sugars, such as glucose or fructose, bind to proteins or lipid molecules in the body. Chronically elevated blood sugar levels, which are characteristic of conditions like type 2 diabetes and prediabetes, greatly accelerate this damaging process. This uncontrolled chemical bonding results in the formation of these harmful AGEs. These compounds can gradually accumulate in various tissues throughout the body over time. As they build up, they detrimentally alter the structure and function of the affected tissues. AGEs essentially cause tissues to become progressively stiffer, less flexible, and dysfunctional, a bit like a slow internal caramelization process. The accumulation of advanced glycation end products exerts widespread damaging effects. These contribute significantly to the complications associated with chronic diseases, particularly diabetes. For example, AGEs play a role in the stiffening and narrowing of blood vessels. This directly promotes the development and progression of atherosclerosis, increasing heart disease risk. Within the skin, AGEs can damage collagen and elastin fibers, leading to premature aging and wrinkles. In the delicate structures of the kidneys, AGEs contribute to diabetic nephropathy, a serious form of kidney disease. They are also implicated in the development of diabetic retinopathy, which can cause vision loss, and diabetic neuropathy, which involves nerve damage. Furthermore, AGEs promote oxidative stress and inflammation, thereby creating a vicious cycle of tissue damage. The combined effects of hyperinsulinemia, lipotoxicity, and glycation clearly illustrate how modern dietary patterns can systematically undermine our health at the cellular level. An ancient blueprint in a modern world, the core of mismatch. The concept of mismatch theory provides a powerful lens to understand modern health. It suggests our bodies are operating with an ancient biological blueprint. This blueprint was meticulously shaped over millions of years of evolution. Our genes were selected based on the environmental pressures our ancestors faced. A primary pressure was the availability of food and the energy needed to acquire it. Our physiology is therefore fundamentally adapted to conditions that are starkly different from those prevalent today. We are, in essence, living with Paleolithic genes in a post-industrial digital age. This discrepancy is at the heart of many contemporary health challenges we observe. Our evolutionary journey predominantly occurred in environments characterized by resource scarcity. Food was not always readily available. Its acquisition often required significant effort. Periods of food shortage were common and unpredictable occurrences. This constant threat of hunger acted as a strong selective force. Genes that promoted efficient energy storage during times of plenty would have conferred a survival advantage. Individuals who could effectively convert surplus calories into body fat were better equipped to endure subsequent lean periods. This thrifty genetic predisposition, highly beneficial in the past, now contributes to our modern susceptibility to weight gain when faced with constant caloric abundance. Our biology is inherently designed to conserve energy. Beyond simple scarcity, our bodies adapted to pronounced cycles of feast and famine. Ancestral life was a rhythm of fluctuating food availability. There were times of successful hunts or bountiful foraging, providing ample calories. These periods were often followed by times when food was scarce, forcing reliance on stored energy. This cyclical pattern deeply influenced our metabolic flexibility. Our physiological systems evolved to switch efficiently between using carbohydrates for fuel when food was abundant and burning stored fat for energy when food was limited. This metabolic adaptability was a cornerstone of survival. However, most modern diets rarely impose these natural famine cycles, keeping us in a near-constant feast state. The critical point is the immense timescale over which these adaptations were established. Human genetic makeup was slowly forged over more than 2 million years of hunter-gatherer existence. In stark contrast, the agricultural revolution began only about 10,000 years ago. The Industrial Revolution, which dramatically altered food processing and availability, is even more recent, starting just a couple of centuries ago. Our genes simply have not had sufficient time to adapt to these rapid and profound changes in our diet and lifestyle. This creates a fundamental mismatch, as evolutionary biologist Daniel Lieberman's work often emphasizes. Our ancient physiology is now struggling to cope with a nutritional environment it was never designed for, leading to widespread dysfunction. When evolution meets abundance, the consequences of the discord become apparent. The modern world presents a stark contrast to the environment our genes expect. Many societies today are characterized by chronic caloric surplus. Food, particularly highly processed and energy-dense options, is almost constantly available. Obtaining these calories often requires minimal physical exertion, a departure from the active foraging and hunting of our ancestors. This unprecedented abundance directly clashes with our evolutionary programming for scarcity. Our bodies, finely tuned to store energy efficiently, are now overwhelmed by this relentless influx of calories. This persistent positive energy balance, where intake consistently exceeds expenditure, is a primary driver of the rising rates of obesity and related metabolic disorders. The ancient survival mechanism has become a modern liability. This caloric surplus is often compounded by increasingly sedentary behavior. Our ancestors engaged in substantial physical activity as an integral part of daily life. They walked long distances, hunted, gathered, and performed various manual tasks essential for survival. In contrast, modern lifestyles for many involve prolonged periods of sitting. We sit at desks for work, commute in vehicles, and spend leisure time engaged in screen-based activities. This dramatic reduction in overall energy expenditure further exacerbates the problem posed by readily available calories. We are consuming far more energy than our bodies are using. This combination of overnutrition and underactivity creates a perfect storm for metabolic dysregulation, pushing our ancient genetic framework beyond its adaptive limits. Metabolic inflexibility, a consequence of the mismatch, impairs the body's ability to efficiently burn fat for energy due to constant carbohydrate availability. This fundamental mismatch between our evolved biology and current lifestyles leads to several detrimental effects. One major consequence is metabolic inflexibility. Because our diets are often consistently high in carbohydrates, our bodies become very adept at burning glucose for fuel. However, they become less efficient at accessing and burning stored fat. This is because the pathways for fat oxidation are less frequently utilized. Hormonal systems that regulate appetite and energy balance also become dysregulated. For instance, resistance to leptin, the hormone that signals fullness, can develop. Similarly, ghrelin, the hormone that stimulates hunger, may not be suppressed appropriately. This hormonal confusion contributes to persistent overeating and difficulty in maintaining a healthy body weight. Furthermore, the modern diet significantly impacts our gut microbiome, as highlighted by researchers like Justin Sonnenberg. Our gut bacteria co-evolved with us, adapting to the high-fiber, diverse plant-based diets of our ancestors. These diets nurtured a specific community of microbes beneficial for our health. Today's typical Western diet, often low in dietary fiber and rich in processed ingredients and artificial additives, can drastically alter this delicate microbial ecosystem. This disruption, known as dysbiosis, can negatively affect our metabolism, immune function, and even contribute to chronic inflammation. This alteration of our internal microbial environment adds yet another layer to the mismatch, demonstrating how profoundly our modern food choices can disconnect us from our evolutionary heritage and impact our overall well-being. The rise of modern chronic diseases paints a concerning picture of global health. However, this situation is not an unchangeable fate. Our bodies possess a remarkable capacity for healing and restoration. The damage inflicted by decades of suboptimal dietary choices can often be mitigated. In many instances, it can even be substantially reversed. The cornerstone of this healing journey lies in returning to the fundamental principles of nutrition. This means consciously shifting away from the highly processed, nutrient-poor foods that dominate the modern food supply. The first, most crucial step is to embrace a diet centered around whole, unprocessed foods. This simple yet profound change can initiate a cascade of positive biochemical transformations within our bodies, setting the stage for recovery. So, what exactly defines whole foods? These are foods that remain as close as possible to their natural state. They are largely unadulterated by industrial processing. Think of vibrant fruits and crisp vegetables bursting with vitamins and minerals. Consider lean sources of protein such as fish, poultry, beans, and lentils. Include healthy fats found in avocados, nuts, seeds, and quality olive oil. Whole grains like oats, quinoa, and brown rice also fall into this category when minimally processed. These foods provide a complex matrix of nutrients that work synergistically. This contrasts sharply with ultra-processed products, which are often stripped of beneficial components like fiber. Instead, they are frequently laden with added sugars, unhealthy fats, sodium, and artificial additives, contributing to metabolic distress. One of the most significant benefits of a whole foods diet is its ability to combat chronic inflammation. This persistent low-grade inflammation is a common underlying factor in many modern diseases. Whole foods are naturally rich in a vast array of anti-inflammatory compounds. These include antioxidants such as vitamins C and E, and various phytonutrients like flavonoids and carotenoids. These substances help to neutralize harmful free radicals, reducing oxidative stress on our cells. Many whole foods, especially fatty fish, flax seeds, and walnuts, provide beneficial omega-3 fatty acids. These fats play a critical role in producing anti-inflammatory signaling molecules. Furthermore, the abundant dietary fiber found in whole plant foods helps modulate the immune system, further dampening inappropriate inflammatory responses. Beyond reducing systemic inflammation, a diet rich in whole foods actively works to heal and nourish the gut. Our gastrointestinal tract is home to trillions of microorganisms, collectively known as the gut microbiome. This microbial community plays a vital role in digestion, nutrient absorption, immune function, and even mental health. Dietary fiber, particularly prebiotic fiber from plant foods, serves as the primary food source for these beneficial gut bacteria. A well-nourished microbiome produces short-chain fatty acids like butyrate. These compounds provide energy for colon cells, strengthen the gut barrier, and have anti-inflammatory effects. By prioritizing whole foods, we can foster a diverse and thriving gut ecosystem. This, in turn, helps to reduce gut-derived inflammation and improve overall metabolic health. Section 2, Strategic Dietary Shifts, Fasting and Targeted Macronutrient Approaches. Beyond the foundational shift to whole foods, specific dietary strategies can accelerate metabolic healing. Intermittent fasting, or IF, has emerged as a powerful tool in this regard. Intermittent fasting is not about what you eat, but when you eat. It involves cycling between periods of eating and voluntary fasting. There are several popular methods. These include time-restricted feeding, such as eating only within an 8-hour window each day. Other methods involve alternate-day fasting or fasting for 24 hours once or twice a week. These practices, while sounding modern, echo the feast and famine cycles of our ancestors. Modern scientific research is increasingly validating their profound health benefits when implemented correctly and safely. IF offers a way to reset metabolic pathways. One of the primary benefits of intermittent fasting is its ability to improve insulin sensitivity. When we are constantly eating, especially carbohydrate-rich foods, our insulin levels remain chronically elevated. Intermittent fasting provides periods where insulin levels can naturally fall. This break gives the pancreas a rest from continuous insulin production. It also allows cells throughout the body to become more responsive to insulin signals again. This enhanced insulin sensitivity is crucial for better blood sugar control. Furthermore, fasting triggers a vital cellular cleanup process called autophagy. As highlighted by researchers like Walter Longo, autophagy allows cells to degrade and recycle damaged components. This process promotes cellular rejuvenation and may protect against various age-related diseases, contributing significantly to overall health optimization. Another effective dietary strategy, particularly for certain metabolic conditions, is a low-carbohydrate, high-protein diet, or LCHP. Such diets intentionally restrict the intake of carbohydrates, especially refined ones. They emphasize adequate or increased protein intake alongside healthy fats. Significant evidence, including studies like the Virta Health trial reported by Hallberg and colleagues in 2018, supports their efficacy. LCHP diets have been shown to be particularly effective in reducing liver fat. This is a key factor in non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. They can also lead to substantial improvements in glycemic control for individuals with type 2 diabetes. This is often reflected in a significant reduction in HbA1c levels, a marker of long-term blood sugar management. Intermittent fasting and low-carbohydrate, high-protein approaches can sometimes work synergistically. Both strategies help to lower insulin levels and encourage the body to burn fat for fuel. Combining these approaches may amplify their benefits for some individuals. However, it is crucial to remember that dietary needs are highly individual. What works exceptionally well for one person may not be suitable for another. Significant dietary changes, especially for those with pre-existing health conditions or who are on medication, should always be undertaken with careful consideration. Consulting with a healthcare professional or a registered dietitian is essential. They can provide personalized guidance and ensure that any dietary interventions are implemented safely and effectively to achieve the desired health outcomes. Section 3. Amplifying renewal. The crucial role of physical activity, reversing the damage caused by modern dietary patterns, is not solely about food choices. Physical activity is an indispensable partner in the journey towards metabolic healing. Exercise should not be viewed merely as a tool for burning calories or managing weight. Its benefits extend far deeper, influencing our biochemistry in profound and positive ways. Regular physical activity acts as a powerful medicine for the body. It complements and enhances the positive effects of a nutritious diet. Engaging in consistent movement is a non-negotiable component of a lifestyle designed to restore and maintain optimal health. Its impact on metabolic markers, insulin sensitivity, and cellular function is well documented and critically important for long-term well-being. One of the most significant metabolic benefits of exercise is its effect on glucose metabolism. Physical activity, particularly muscle-contracting exercise, increases the activity of GLUT4 transporters. GLUT4 is a protein responsible for transporting glucose from the bloodstream into muscle and fat cells. Crucially, exercise can stimulate GLUT4 translocation to the cell surface independently of insulin. This means that muscles can take up glucose even when insulin levels are low or when cells are insulin resistant. This mechanism helps to lower blood sugar levels and significantly improves overall insulin sensitivity. Regular exercise effectively makes your muscles more efficient at utilizing glucose. This reduces the burden on the pancreas to produce excessive amounts of insulin, aiding in metabolic recovery. Exercise also activates a critical enzyme called AMP-activated protein kinase, or AMPK. AMPK acts as a metabolic master switch within our cells. It senses the cellular energy status. When energy levels are low, such as during exercise, AMPK is activated. Once activated, AMPK initiates a cascade of downstream effects. It signals cells to increase glucose uptake and to ramp up the burning of fatty acids for energy. Simultaneously, it inhibits processes that consume energy, such as fat storage and protein synthesis. Essentially, AMPK shifts the body towards a catabolic energy-producing state. This makes it a key player in improving body composition, reducing fat accumulation and enhancing mitochondrial biogenesis, the creation of new mitochondria, our cellular powerhouses. Ultimately, the most effective way to reverse metabolic damage involves a holistic approach. Dietary changes and regular physical activity work in powerful synergy. A whole foods diet provides the right building blocks and reduces inflammatory triggers. Exercise enhances the body's ability to use those nutrients efficiently and improves metabolic flexibility. Together, these lifestyle modifications can lead to profound improvements in health and vitality. While the challenges posed by our modern environment are significant, we are not powerless. By making informed choices about what we eat and how we move, we can take active control of our health. We can reverse many aspects of diet-induced damage and pave the way for a healthier, more vibrant future. Section 1. Our shared food story, a reflection on health and heritage. Our exploration has journeyed through vast expanses of time. We began with the diets of our earliest ancestors, the hunter-gatherers. Their food was wild, unprocessed, and earned through physical effort. This ancient way of eating shaped our fundamental biology over millions of years. Then we witnessed the dramatic shift brought by the agricultural revolution. Grains and dairy entered our diet, altering its composition significantly. Finally, the Industrial Revolution ushered in an era of ultra-processed foods. Refined sugars, flours, and industrial seed oils became dietary staples. This rapid dietary evolution has had profound consequences for us. Our genes, largely unchanged, now face a vastly different nutritional environment. This profound mismatch between our ancient biology and our modern diet is not merely an academic observation. It is a central theme in understanding today's widespread chronic health issues. Conditions such as obesity, type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular disease have reached epidemic proportions. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and polycystic ovary syndrome are also increasingly common. These are not isolated ailments, but interconnected metabolic disorders. The biochemical drivers are clear hyperinsulinemia, chronic inflammation, lipotoxicity, and the accumulation of advanced glycation end products. These processes silently undermine our health at a cellular level. They are the direct biological echoes of our altered eating patterns. The modern food environment often seems to work against our innate biological needs. We're constantly surrounded by hyper-palatable, energy-dense, nutrient-poor options. These foods are engineered to override our natural satiety signals. They drive overconsumption and contribute to a state of chronic caloric surplus. This is coupled with increasingly sedentary lifestyles, further exacerbating the problem. The wisdom of scarcity that shaped our ancestors' metabolism is now challenged by an age of unprecedented abundance. Our bodies, designed to efficiently store energy for lean times, now find themselves in a perpetual state of feast. This continuous nutritional overload strains our physiological systems. Yet, understanding this complex food history empowers us significantly. It provides a clear context for the health challenges many of us face. We learn that our current struggles are often not due to a lack of willpower. Instead, they are frequently a natural biological response to an unnatural food environment. While we cannot return to living exactly like our hunter-gatherer forebears, we can certainly learn from their dietary patterns. Their history is imprinted in our genes. This knowledge forms the foundation for making informed choices. It allows us to reclaim agency over our health. We can choose foods that nourish rather than harm, aligning our modern lives with our ancient biological heritage. Section 2. Navigating the modern plate, choices for a vibrant tomorrow. Our food history indeed significantly influences our health destiny. However, this destiny is not fixed. It can be actively shaped by the choices we make today. We possess the ability to steer our health towards a more positive trajectory. This involves consciously selecting foods that resonate with our deeply rooted biology. It means prioritizing the nutrient-dense whole foods that sustained our ancestors for millennia. This path requires a mindful departure from the convenience of ultra-processed items. It asks us to reevaluate what truly constitutes nourishment. The power to combat modern diseases lies significantly in our daily dietary decisions. We can choose a future of greater vitality. The core principle is to embrace foods that our bodies are evolutionarily designed to thrive on. This means building our meals around whole, unprocessed ingredients. We should prioritize ample protein from lean meats, fish, eggs, or plant-based sources. Healthy natural fats from avocados, nuts, seeds, and quality oils are essential. Abundant fiber from a wide variety of vegetables, fruits, and legumes is crucial. These foods provide the essential vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients our cells crave. Conversely, we must consciously reduce our intake of detrimental substances. This includes refined sugars, industrial seed oils high in omega-6 fatty acids, and heavily processed carbohydrates. These are the elements that contribute most to metabolic dysregulation and chronic inflammation. The strategies discussed for reversing existing metabolic damage offer tangible hope. Intermittent fasting, by reintroducing periods of caloric restraint, can improve insulin sensitivity. It promotes cellular repair through processes like autophagy, echoing ancestral feast-famine cycles. Low-carbohydrate, high-protein dietary approaches can effectively reduce liver fat. They can also stabilize blood sugar levels and support weight management. Crucially, physical activity remains an indispensable ally in this journey. Exercise enhances insulin sensitivity, builds metabolically active muscle, and supports overall cellular health. These interventions are not fleeting trends. They are evidence-based methods to restore balance to our physiology. They help our bodies function as they were meant to. In conclusion, the path from mammoths to microwaves has been one of dramatic dietary change. This journey has presented our ancient biology with unprecedented challenges. However, it has also equipped us with invaluable knowledge. We now understand how these dietary shifts have shaped modern health. Armed with this understanding, we can make deliberate choices. We can choose foods that honor our evolutionary heritage. We can prioritize protein, healthy fats, fiber, and strategic fasting. We can reduce our reliance on sugar, refined seed oils, and ultra-processed carbs. These choices are our most potent weapons against the tide of modern diseases. They are the keys to unlocking a healthier, more vibrant future for ourselves and generations to come. Please follow the Life Lens channel to support us in growing and creating more content backed by science.